fact, we've got a very exciting panel coming next. I see Dan, I see Michael, Cristina, and we should be getting, hold on one second. So, Cristina, welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back, Cristina.
Michael, excellent. And we should be getting Chris as well anytime soon. So thank you very much. It's 3:01 here in California. This is a very important panel, a very important topic, with especially after the big announcement from our dear friend from Speed Sport yesterday. So Paul, we'll let you carry on. Okay,
great. Well, we're missing a car here, but we'll go ahead and get started anyhow. Walter, we're sitting at there's Chris coming in. We'll give 1 more second just to let him get on the screen.
There he is.
Okay, great. Hi, Chris. Welcome to the future, which is what we're going to talk about. Great to have you all here today. This is we see a huge change in consumer behavior in the media space, and we've been obviously seeing it for some time. But when it comes to television, we're seeing the consumption of motorsport on television. The way people are accessing and consuming it is vastly different than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And I would like you all to talk a little bit about what you're seeing and what you believe it means to your business. And we're going to go through some other topics as we go deeper, but I want to kind of set the stage with your observations of what you've seen. Who wants to go first?
Dan's breaking news. He should do it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, because it was breaking up. I didn't hear the beginning of your comment there, Paul. I forgive me.
Yeah, I was the same.
My apologies. I've been
Let me step in for 1 second. Looks like Paul is having some technical difficulties with his internet. So Dan, why don't you just carry on and start, sharing a little bit, what you guys are doing, and then we'll wait for Paul to get back on. But I'll do the interim in between.
Okay, yeah. So I'm guessing I didn't hear what you first it started with, but I know Mike. Thanks, Mike. But mentioning that we, the announcement yesterday of Speed Sport 1, so we're pretty excited about that. For someone like me, Speed Sport's been the guys Chris and Joe Tripp and Ralph Shaheen. They've been working on this for over a year, and for me to be able to step in here and just build off the concept that they've built. To really, my business has always been to distribute, monetize these type of networks, and in a way, this is a dream come true to me. It's like these guys have created this concept, and it's our ability to start a television network from scratch. If you could, if someone gave you a sheet of paper and said, "Hey, how would you describe the television network or the motorsports network you'd like to build if you had all the resources and you didn't have any limitations from traditional linear or satellite cable, contracts, and you had access to content, what would you do?" And so the beauty is we've been able to craft this network that we think is a true complement, it's to all the things that Mike's doing, that Christina's doing, that all the motorsports networks are doing out there, because I think at the end of the day, the objective is to raise the whole boat for motorsports. And I think technology is allowing us to do that between the SVOD streaming services and the fast channel platforms. It's giving more people access to content, and we're happy to be a part of it. We're going to focus, I think, as you've read in the press release, our focus is really going to be live. We feel it's very important to us to focus on remaining authentic to the true race fan, but at the same time putting storytelling, some context around the content, so it's compelling for maybe the casual race fan and even the general audience out there. So we just feel it's another addition to motorsports and how to really improve the sport as a whole. Tell some of the stories behind it.
Thank you, Dan. And Cristina, do you want to step in? We had Brian Carter this morning, telling us a lot of what's going on and what has happening and kind of sharing the future for the world of Outlaw. And you have been on this program before. So why don't you take on?
Yeah, I to the previous question, I guess, I don't see, I mean, we've been seeing people moving away from TV to OTT platforms for the last several years, and OTT platforms in general are supposed to be what, $195 billion industry in like the next 2 years. So what we're seeing in motorsports, I don't think in any way is really different than what we're seeing elsewhere. People are now at their homes or watching Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime. All the. I think what you do see a little bit in motorsports, and initially it opened the OTT platforms opened streaming up to more providers, and I think just as you saw with the sort of more mainstream OTT platforms, you're seeing, there's 3 of us here, and there's still a lot of smaller ones out there, but you're seeing that consolidation in the same way that you're seeing in the bigger picture as well, for better or worse. That's just the trends that we're seeing across the space. It certainly allows us to bring motorsports to Dan's point, to a much broader audience. And we've definitely seen growth in the sport. I do think that at least from our end, because we're sort of full spectrum and have, the sanctioning body, we're still trying to get tickets and seats, and we still look at the streaming platform as a marketing tool, but also have the other pieces to market the streaming platform as well. So, and I guess what I'm trying to say is we're trying to broaden that audience all the time. And when we're doing that, we have to look at how to get tickets and seat first, right? I don't think people start watching, or people get excited or get introduced to racing through watching it on a live stream product or on TV. I think that to go to the track, to smell it, to see it in person, to hear it gets you excited about it, and then you want to follow it and watch. So I think that's probably where our perspective is a little bit different. I don't know if I missed something there, but I'll let other people talk.
You did really well, and I think Paul Fanner is back, so I'm just going to give it back to you, Paul. I did my best, however I could.
Well, thank you. Well, I hope everyone could speak French now.
Yes, yeah, on va parler français à partir de maintenant. Il n'y a pas de problème.
Your free French lesson is over. We'll go back to the topic at hand. Well, I caught the last of what Cristina was saying, and first off, I agree that being part of the live event experience is key. But once you've been connected, I think the thing that I think what we saw during pandemic is when you couldn't be at the racetrack, some of these races were still going on. So what does that mean now to live stream?
So if you don't mind, I'll step in there, and I agree with both Cristina and Dan. And has there ever been a better time to be a motorsports fan than today? When you've got really established and professionalized media companies competing hard for the viewer eyeball to watch motorsports. What an opportunity for the economy of the sport, as we're all competing and driving more revenue into the hands of promoters, into tracks, into the drivers and teams themselves. It's truly exciting. Flow comes from a third perspective, right? Where we're a media company first and foremost. We want fans in the seats for sure, and believe in everything that Cristina mentioned. That's where avid fandom comes from. We also have seen discovery through the media lens, right? And for FloSports, Flow Racing is one of 20 channels that we have, and we get to hear from our customers all over the place. They get introduced to motorsports for the first time when maybe they entered through a college NCAA partnership and discover racing, or maybe they came in and discovered drag racing through Flow Racing and discovered how exciting short track dirt racing is. So either way you skin the cat between the three perspectives that we have, the winners are the fans. And that's that's a really fantastic place for us all to be sitting today, and just creates more and more opportunities to grow the sport that we all love.
Yeah, and Paul, I think we're in a unique spot, and you're seeing it as we all are very competitive in the industry and chasing down media opportunities. I come from a perspective of a boots on the ground. I've been doing this for 12 years. I don't attend the events nearly as much as I once did, but we have escalated the quality over the past, let's say 12 to 15 years. And we're now coming to a transitionary period where we fundamentally understand how to deliver and I call it green to checkers, but for those people who maybe out in the audience would see that in a little different way, I'm talking about they start the event and 6 hours later it ends. We've become, or 5 or 3 or 4, whatever it works out to. We've brought that product to a place now that we're fairly sophisticated, and that's everybody. That's Michael, that's Cristina, and that's the folks that we work with throughout the platform. We're now ready to take that somewhere else. We are now ready to start taking that content and delivering it in other ways with added storytelling in a more convincing manner that does reach a broader audience. And I don't think all of us have the answers, but I can tell you everybody here is thinking about the answers, and that's it's higher up now on our list of priorities than ever, because we're all very good at doing this now. So the core fan has had content that's delivered, and they're very happy with that. Now, how do we get beyond that thing? And that's where I think it starts to get interesting in our marketplace. And as Michael said, the winners are the racing fans. And then it's a matter of, how all those things fall out. But it's great that we have an opportunity with the OTT platforms opening up the various mechanisms for us to deliver video. And as we're consolidating, I think it's helping and them understand where those spots are for the fans so that they can consume this. And I think what we'll all be doing is finding more touch points to the fan and the potential fan to expand that audience and really give people an opportunity to hone in on new opportunities in motorsports. So we're not doing what we've been doing for the last 20 to 30 years. And again, I come from a very grassroots perspective of 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours at the racetrack. And we will have to get beyond that somehow. I don't know the answer, but we have to get beyond that for the casual fan so that they can consume it initially in nice chunks that engage them and get them past being a hardcore fan. We have to start with soft, the initial fan and engaging them first to create the hardcore fan.
Well, what we do have now is an era, though, where the audience is the medium and new media. Your ability to share what you're interested in and spread the virus, if you will, of motorsport, your passion for it has never been greater. Yet at the same time, I want to ask all of you, we've got two types of fans we're talking about. The dedicated, devoted, whatever you want to call it, hardcore, passionate fan who's wanted this. To us, that's the foundation of our business. Everything we do we work for that person. But this other fan has a different set of needs or wants or desires as they discover the sport. Can I get your perspectives on what they want as this new age dawns here? We're really seeing a sea change in how people consume motorsports. What do they want? What does the hardcore devoted fan want first? And what does this new fan want that you're going to be able to deliver them?
I'll take a stab at it first. From the FloSports and Flow Racing perspective, and I suspect this is shared by my comrades here, we're striving to be the essential destination for motorsports fans. And that crosses, in our case, multiple genres and multiple types of racing. We're trying to do that, of course, through the live. And as Chris alluded to, we're literally on a monthly basis improving the quality of the production the most hardcore avid fans want to see the action where it is on the track, not necessarily following the leader. So you need trained and professional shooters catching that action. They want the sound to be right. All of us have stepped up in that perspective, leaps and bounds from even 12 months ago, I think. For our perspective also, we think that the incoming fans and particularly younger fans are nerdy for statistics and data. They want to see the context in the morning from the evening before, and at afternoon, they want to see the previews coming in for the evening's races. And so we're working hard to create new and differentiated ways to engage the fan 24/7, 365 with news, information, analysis, storytelling, documentaries, statistics, the live scoring, and see if we can surround the fan in that capacity so that at any given moment in time, they know that when they come to Flow Racing, they're going to get whatever information it is that they're pursuing. Everybody here is striving for that and doing a good job at it. I think we're at different levels. There's certain areas where we certainly have a great improvement to do, and breaking news, which Speed Sport does, and Cristina and Dirt Vision, they have first party data from their drivers and their teams. So we're at different stages. But again, the benefit goes to the fans as we kind of compete to be the best at what we do and continue to drive a better product and a more evolved product for a fan base that's their needs are changing on a daily, monthly, and yearly basis as well.
I think Chris alluded to it as well with just sort of a cut to the chase, right? If I'm not a hardcore fan, I probably don't want to spend 4 hours. So just give me the good stuff. And the good thing about, the digital world is you can actually do that and give them, cut straight to the good stuff.
Yeah, and
I'm going to give you a direct, sorry, I didn't mean to step on you, Dan, go ahead.
I was just going to say our business model is going to be a little different. We've created a network for a free ad supported streaming television platform. So we're truly in a free market in the product that we're developing. So we have to make sure that we can scale an audience. So our content, while we have to, like I mentioned, we have to be authentic to that core audience. We also have to be able to expand what that audience looks like for us, because again, the way we're going to monetize it for both us and our partners is through a broader audience. So it's really about, again, for us, it's besides the live focus on live racing, which, we know people tune into, it's really going to be about the storytelling that we can build into our content and around our content and around the sport as a whole.
And to give you a tangible, sort of more precise answer of how things are changing, one of our larger events is the IMCA Super Nationals in Boone, Iowa. 8 days of racing, 12 hours a day, literally, of live content. But one of the things that we did last year, and I'm guessing that this is also happening at Dirt Vision and at Flow, for that production, we prioritized social media content, and we had editors on site that was their only responsibility. And we actually changed our entire production execution so that we could prioritize the timeliness that they could get access to video and put it out into the media sphere, mostly on social media. And that didn't happen really even 3 years ago. Most of those things were probably happening on a little more delayed pace. And so just to understand, some of those little snippets and cool highlights, maybe they come out a day or two later. We are trying to push those out now in minutes. I want those things out as quickly as possible. And then sometimes we are prioritizing them over some of the other things that may or may not have been trade-offs into the overall production, because it's just so important to reach the audience or the potential new audience. The hardcore folks, we all know how to deliver to pretty well. And as Michael said, we keep on we're keeping tabs with each other. And when we see something that the other person does or something in our space, we know, hey, we need to all step it up and execute that. And I think we all respect those core production things. But ideally, it's that, how you reach that new person and that new audience is what Cristina alluded to. How do you get somebody to just latch on to something that's exciting, that's quick, and then possibly entice them, to just develop a relationship, at least have that opportunity, because they are not, that guy, that gal is not going and buying the 12-hour stream from Boone, Iowa. They're just not doing it.
That's a really interesting point. And, you know, I think that when we come from within inside the sport, the initial thought is that you're serving that core fan. But, you know, we see it on our platform on racer.com. A normal day is 30 to 50,000 unique users a day. But we get these wild days where off-site something will take off and it'll spike to 180. One day, I think the biggest traffic single day was over 300,000 unique visitors because of a single oddball story that lofted into the stratosphere that we still don't know why that story did it. But what it did is it made us realize, hey, they're out there. There's this whole world beyond that. What I get the feeling is happening here is this content has a gravity to it. If it's consumable, it's short, it's compelling. You know, there's a string people pull on that brings them an inch closer to caring. And if they come into what you're showing here, you've got an audience that you didn't have before. If you give them what they want, which is one of the questions I want to get to the heart of, is what do they want as this world changes? You know, the day of the appointment television viewing circumstance is fading. You know, we're not sitting in front of the big old TV set in the living room anymore. We've got our mobile phone, we've got our tablet, we're watching.
Oh no, did Paul just stutter there for everybody?
Yes.
I'll at least try to segue. I like to give this an example, and I know we all hear it in our space about Drive to Survive. And obviously we don't have the budgets of Netflix to execute that level of production. But I like to give the example in that space of, what do you think the most popular episode was ranked on IMDb for that show? And I always mispronounce Grosjean's name. I get it wrong.
Grosjean,
but it's his, it's his wreck while he's in last place in points. That's the highest rated, most well-received episode. And so it tells you a little bit of a story about, they were talking about last place in points. It's emotionally grabbing. If you go and watch the episode, I don't know, maybe you see 3 laps of racing, and they have parlayed that into taking Austin's attendance. I think it was somewhere around 80,000 that were attending the event to something like 400,000 plus. Mm-hmm. So it gives you some context as to what a new audience is searching for. And it almost, I mean, sometimes I think maybe we have blinders on if we're internal to into motorsports, that we're always thinking racing.
Yeah.
What got 400,000 people to Austin wasn't racing. What got another race into Vegas wasn't racing. And I think that's where we're starting to think that way, back to the transitionary sort of time. We're trying to take off the blinders and think broader about what we're doing. Because we can now. We've developed enough that we can do it.
Yeah.
Well, you went right past question number 4. Thank you. You're in the lead.
I think there's been a cool thing, and Cristina and Chris, certainly you guys probably could speak to this better than I can. It seems to me that with the increased availability of streaming, the new revenue that's come into the market from all of us, right? Because we're all, you know, bidding on rights and distributing more revenue to various assets. The purses of all these, many of these events are going up. It seems to me like the racing is also better, which and is harder. They're racing harder for those purses, which also creates more of those storylines that you speak of, Chris. So, you know, I've kind of observed and have had some meetings with some racers that have at least shared that at the end of the day, racers are racers, right? And they're going to go out and compete hard, particularly when they can go home and feed their families and pay their teams and all this stuff. And I think we've been a big contributor into the elevation of the competition, which keeps getting better as far as I can tell, which feeds into those storylines, Chris, that you talked about, that those gain some viral traction. So, I'm proud of the contributions we've collectively made, because I think we've elevated all aspects of the economy of the sport, and in our respective spaces, increased the competition, which is sometimes a story that I don't think gets told.
Yes, and I think it touches on something I was going to ask you all about. We our friends at Speed Sport are, they're friends. We overlap very little in what we cover. But we know they cover a certain side of the motorsport spectrum, and we focus on what primarily is road racing and European-centric motorsport for the most part. But the advantage of American racing is that it's simpler and easier to cover. The production costs are less on an oval track, and the hidden jewel under the surface is the world changed and went Eurocentric in a lot of American racing. What we had was an economy that was ready to take off in the short track market once it had something like that. And World of Outlaws turned to it a long time ago. You want to talk about that?
Sorry, I lost you there for a little
I
bit.
did too. I didn't hear what.
Oh, my apologies. For some reason, we've decided after a whole week of being able to use a Zoom call, it's not working anymore.
The streaming panel is
tired.
going to be the one panel that has this problem.
Yeah, it would be the one.
Feels right.
Just how it goes.
Well, I might transfer to my phone. That might be better. You all take the panel from here, and I'll just nod.
No, you were pretty good. It's just, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, the question is, the economy of short track racing has really benefited from this. Our side of the world, we primarily cover a lot of road racing series, which are harder production-wise to cover. There's a fan base that's willing to connect to short track, oval track racing. I grew up going to those races, and this was a hidden jewel. World of Outlaws really exploited this early on, but now we have this vibrancy in this core market. What do you do with that? Because you got to tell the stories of the athletes. There's a whole lot more that can happen here. We're at the beginning. How far can this go?
As far as we can take it, right? I mean, Dan alluded to the storytelling. Chris did as well. I mean, the Netflix series was what it was because it gave that behind the scenes look, and that is what people want in the digital space. That's what the digital space was when it started. Like outside of the video space online, outside of the movie trailers were vlogs, and then that gave into narratives that were meant to make you look like you were watching something through a keyhole, even when it was fiction, right? Like the idea was make people believe they're seeing something that they really shouldn't be seeing, right? And I don't think we exploit that nearly enough, right? That is a huge, like TV always did some of it, right? Like they gave you these little prepackaged segments of whatever, PBR, the guy at home doing his thing on his ranch, or the NFL player doing whatever he does when he's not on but there are these very produced pretty packages. We can do a lot more of that. And I think sometimes because we're so close to it and we spend so much time, as Chris alluded to, at the track, we see it so much that we don't think it's interesting. Right. But it is interesting, especially to that fan, Paul, that you were talking of, that's not the hardcore fan. They want to see the behind the scenes that we're so close to. We think it's not interesting.
Well, that's that fan, from what I've observed, we've seen a 10-point shift in age, younger, over this recent period of time. And a lot of the people we run into now are people that are the Drive to Survive generation. They're people that are going to spend most of their lives in this century. And what happens is they start pulling on that string for more. Michael, you alluded to the fact that you're going to provide more content of that type on your platform.
Yeah.
I know that World of Outlaws does. I'm absolutely sure that Speed Sport does, because I go there every day. It's one of my habits is, it's connecting to Speed Sport's been a habit since I was 9 years old. So I think that.
Yeah. we've developed a films team, within the FloSports ecosystem. We have a films team that is tasked with creating long form content of that nature.
Right.
So certainly we're going to be doing more of that. The other thing that I'd add to what Cristina said, which is cool, is I think that there's a resurgence from the drivers and teams at the highest levels of motorsports seem to want to be giving back to the grassroots spaces. Guys like Kyle Larson on the dirt side, are really investing in growing grassroots racing and making stars of the drivers at that level. Starting to see Dale Jr. do it on the pavement side, where he's wanting to give back to the grassroots space. And even on the NHRA side, where we're dabbling in drag racing, you're seeing some of the stars of the NHRA who are wanting to give back to the more grassroots side. All of that creates momentum. The phrase I like to use is connective tissue to the highest levels of the sports, to the grassroots. And we know that NASCAR reaches millions and millions more fans than we do at our level. But if we can connect those things, the overall ecosystem grows. And again, the benefit cascades to everyone. And so to your point about how do you keep it going, for us, that's an area of concentration. Is bringing new audiences through existing motorsports fans that maybe just haven't quite discovered what's going on in B and C counties around America every night. Get them exposed to that, because in some cases, my NASCAR partner might not like it. What's going on at our level that we're producing every night, it's more entertaining. And we just got to share it with more people.
It's also more fun.
And I think it can make you a better program. The amount of data and the dissemination of data that's available through streaming has really allowed us to be better programmers too, right? We can take a look at what people are watching and seeing if it's resonating also. I think that's been a big change in the last few years, without a doubt.
Paul,
So-
I was gonna touch on, sort of the original question. You addressed how much more difficult it is to do a road course than a small dirt oval or a pavement oval, or even a drag strip or a truck and tractor pull, anything that sits in front of a single camera. And really, that's part of our storyline and why we're here, is that we are able to at least get somebody initiated into the media process. And we're really start at the streaming and work your way up towards television market versus start at television and drop your way down.
Right.
So we're able to, based on of developing an ecosystem for media. If you were to think about the group that's here on this call, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there were maybe, I don't know, I feel like 25 to 30 people in our space streaming. And now we're probably touching many thousands of people now that we've taken from, some of them from nothing, having no media experience, no production experience, and elevating them over time to fill this void. And it was all about economics, right? I couldn't have shown up at a local racetrack with a TV grade production and a $15,000 to $30,000 a day production truck and had any opportunity to make the economics work. By taking a guy with a camera and some basic, production, techniques and equipment, we were able to start them in the space and elevate them to where they became more professional. And I think that that's the storyline that's brought us here. And then your question of what happens, where does it go? We're going to find out, but we've all invested time in people. And so we filled this void of not having a media ecosystem in the grassroots space. Now we have it. And so now we can start to elevate those people even more and continue our other processes. We've all also become very efficient at onboarding new people. So if there is a gig economy that's out there that we can leverage, we can also leverage that more frequently. I know we all battle over that. That's one of our toughest things right now, is bringing more people into space, but we're very good at it based on, if you were to compare apples to apples, 10 years ago, we can take people, quickly onboard them, and execute a process that makes them fairly competent at producing what people would consider as good content. Now we just have to keep doing it and improving those processes. And that answers your question. Where's it going? it's going to keep going as we iterate our processes and improve those people, and they commit more time and effort into their productions.
So it's like a good idea is the hardest thing in the world to stop. So this is on its way, period. There's no turning back. This is the way it is from now on. You know, Dan, you come from a world of linear cable and you know, the way this world has been. Where's the opportunity to build community in this mix of live and curated content for speed sport?
Well, yeah, you know, I've spent, I'm the oldest one here, probably 30 years in this business, launching networks and developing brands for some of the, you know, the most iconic brands, I guess, in the business, very active brands as far as launching networks. And I can tell you in the last 3 years, nothing's been as exciting as the last 3 years to me with it. And I guess the doors have just opened. I think you've got, you know, you've got this new platform for consumption called streaming. And whether it's you're paying to stream something you really, really want, you can go over, you know, to FloSports and get high on motorsports, right? It's awesome. And, or you can, you know, you got Mad TV and Motor Trend, all the great networks out there. But I think, and now you got the fast channels where you can consume it for free. And it's just opening these doors. And it's, you know, I'm probably the newest guy here to motorsports, and I'm like 9 years into it only. And before that, it was stick and ball for me, you know, with ESPN. And I think what's so amazing to me is that all of a sudden these sports, just in the last 9 years, I've been exposed to new sports within the motorsport genre, like tractor pulling. I for the life of me, I couldn't understand tractor pulling when I got to Mad TV originally. And then you watch it. I found before long I was into it for 20 or 30 minutes and I want to shoot myself. Like, what am I doing? I got to get back to work or whatever it might be, right? So really, and you know, it's a family event and it's really very interesting. But you know, this is things that 10 years ago you didn't even have access to. I think Chris alluded to it. There's 25 people in the business, and the cable company told you what you were going to watch, and it's a race here and it's a race there, and you know, and then certain networks came along and were transitioned back into kind of more stick and ball or traditional networks. So I think with social media and streaming and a younger generation that's consuming content wherever they want to consume it, you know, I think it's really opening doors, and it's given us a chance to really connect the sport, you know, to, you know, it's less about just a race, but more about, you know, there's people just like you and me behind that racing, and they got families and they got teams and everything else. So.
And again, the storytelling that, you know, World of Outlaws does a pretty good job of projecting culture when they do whatever they do. There's something you're buying into that's more than just the racing. And what I always find difficult when we look at the myriad series that we cover is how do you avoid it just being a Tower of Babel? You know, it's all noise, sound, and fury. How do you avoid it becoming just such a big pile of stuff you can't sort it out? You can't, there's no hierarchy. That's a concern just from having been doing this for a while. You know, we were the provider for Speed Vision and for Speed for the website, and it was just, there's a never ending, you know, cascade of content now. People know what they're watching and have a context in which to appreciate it outside of news feeds, outside of documentaries. How do you have a hierarchy like you have in other sports?
I mean, that's certainly, Paul, something we talk about on a regular basis, not just with our own. And when I say our, I mean World Racing Group, and not just Dirt Vision, but all of the different components. Like, how do we stand out from the pack, right? We think about that in terms of the content, in terms of the broadcast, in terms of the series itself at track. And, you know, we're constantly trying new things to do that. But, you know, that again, I think it was Mike that said earlier, like if it's, there are certain things that are always going to be a part of the conversation. Like, it's not that we have all the answers. Maybe it was Chris that said it. Like, we probably don't have the answers, but we're constantly talking about it. So, you know, from a series perspective, we started sort of the fan engagement team. We have the video boards. We're doing, you know, there's just different components that we've added to the show rather than just looking at it as a race. From a broadcast, you know, we're constantly thinking about those same things and thinking about how are we making people want to sit in the seats when we're putting out the product as well. Like, again, back to what I was saying earlier, that we also look at it as a marketing platform for what we do, which is racing. And so we're constantly kind of going back and like, okay, how can we make the broadcast better? How can we make the quality better? Now, how can we make people want to sit in the seats rather than just watching the broadcast? Like, you just have to be constantly questioning and trying new things and pushing the edges of everything you do, because the answer is not there, or maybe there's 50 answers. And I'm sure that, Flow Racing will ask themselves similar questions, and Speed Sport will ask itself similar questions, and they'll answer it in different ways. And that doesn't mean that one way is better than the other. It's just whatever. We just keep trying things on for size. And as Chris said earlier, also watching what we're doing and saying, hey, that's kind of smart. We'd like to do something along those lines. What's our version of that? So it doesn't look like we're copying, right? It's a process.
I agree with you. I agree with you, Cristina. And there was a reference to appointment viewing. World of Outlaws is appointment viewing. And I don't think there's any question about it. Events like the Chili Bowl and Boone are appointment viewing. And then there's everything else. And I watched Brian's panel interview earlier today when he was asked the question, is there too much racing? I think it's a good question. Perhaps there is. Our lens on it and on the subscription side, and kind of why we've chosen to go the subscription model versus the pay-per-view model, is that we don't have to market to a new audience every single time we go live. With the subscription offering, we have those tentpole events that we know are appointment viewing. And then hopefully over the course of those appointment viewings, we're introducing other opportunities, other sports, other niches of racing, maybe a more regional or a local track, and why that's awesome too. And that's great viewership content for a fan that decides that they're addicted to motorsports, and they just, I call it a little bit of the ESPN effect. When I was a kid, and SportsCenter was on all the time, you just turned on ESPN as a habit. Dan, you certainly know about that. My hope is that with Flow Racing, we develop that type of habit where you can wake up in the morning, oh, what's on Flow today? And in that effort, all racing becomes relevant. You expose fans to new tracks so that they do buy tickets and they get curious. So it's a hybrid of those things. But I think that is a legitimate challenge.
Yeah, and I think that even this panel is a good example of the changes of how we're thinking about this. You guys have been on these panels. We've been on these panels together over the years. And just our emphasis in this discussion on the storytelling, on the curation, on the quality of what we're delivering is probably quite a bit higher than it was 2 years ago and 3 years ago when we were talking. And we would probably be more in the facets of, should somebody stream their broadcasting? We haven't had that question, right? We don't even ask that question any longer. But what we've done to this point is we figured out how to turn the fire hose on. It's on. We know how to do that. And now we need to understand how to direct that fire hose a little bit, so we can take and curate some of those elements and keep on improving the processes so that we're doing more than just the basics. And you hear that in this discussion. I think that's what Paul was somewhat alluding to. Where is there too much? Well, we have a lot of it. I don't know if we have too much or not. And how do you direct people into the audiences? We don't all have it nailed down, but we are thinking about it nonstop. We are trying to understand the different delivery mechanisms, whether it be through social media or branded elements that I don't always necessarily like to queue up the competition, but I think in drag racing you now have Flow Drag Racing as a separate social media element versus just Flow Racing. So you realized it's sort of hard sometimes to cross over. We have to make sure that we're delivering to that core audience. So sometimes we slice and dice and find other delivery mechanisms. World Racing Group isn't going to have as much of that issue. You guys have your core brand and you can deliver on that, and you're pretty much all dirt. But fire hose is on, and we're trying to solve the problem, and we're talking about it all the time, just like in this panel. and more so than we were just about how do we stream things and talking about core technology problems. That's what we were doing 5 years ago. So we're here, and now we're starting to work on it.
Well, I think that and I can see that just the movement in the last 2 or 3 years. I had a colleague come into my office and visit me and tell me about Flo. Jason Ford, who I'd worked with at USA Today, came to visit us and showed me. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, game on, this is serious. You know, this is the world's about to change. And of course, I've been aware of what you've been working on here, and I'm very, very pleased to see it. But what I ultimately think we're all truly in the business of, everybody on this screen, is energizing the audience. And finding an energizing audience and giving them a reason to care and want to know more. And ultimately, brands or behaviors are not things. They're basically how your events behave through the lens of live, attendance, and how they behave through the lens of live streaming and the shoulder programming you create. That's so important, but even probably a greater magnitude here, because there's so much stuff, you've got to stand out. So this personality issue, I don't want to let go of, because I think that's, I personally just think that's ultimately what it comes down to. And the life and death of brands and media comes down to standing for something and being more than just a tube stuff comes through. How do you
mentioned
win it?
Jason Ford, so you mentioned Jason Ford, so I'll lean in and give that guy a compliment. One of the things that streaming has done, which is really powerful, by bringing this sport to larger audiences. This year alone, we're bringing in non-endemic advertisers and marketers into short track racing.
Yeah,
a company like Tezos, who is a major sponsor of Major League Baseball and the New York Mets, is also spending significant money on short track racing. Geico is back in short track racing. And so when we have the opportunity to introduce those types of brands to the excitement of what we're doing now, that also will cascade to the teams and the tracks and the promoters who I think need to find differentiated ways of monetizing their assets so that they can continue to thrive above and beyond streaming, certainly. Those opportunities are increasingly available, and the audience is scaling to such that there are new monetization aspects for all levels of the sport.
Well, I'll be faceless and just say, I think you're right. But we're in the early days, early laps. It's a long race. So this, this finding the character and the personality of what you're doing as this evolves, to me, that's one of the most important parts of this puzzle. One of the questions I have is you've mentioned this consequence of, consumer-facing brands coming into short track racing, which is, was not something that was on my radar 5 years ago. So there are other consequences. What do you see the other positive or negative consequences to be? I'd like to focus on positives, since I think that's what the people here want to see. What other consequences, what's the evolution of this look like? More money sometimes doesn't always bring more happiness, but it does elevate expectation. Is there going to be consolidation?
I think my opinion is somewhat that motorsports has still got room to grow, because I don't know that the audiences have identified every type of motorsport that they really like yet, because they haven't been exposed to it. So I think there's room to grow there. And I think, it's not about cannibalizing one of our outlets against another, because at the end of the day, it doesn't behoove any of us to cannibalize content. Cannibalize audiences, and our platforms will keep us honest. They're not going to let us do it either, right? They're trying to build a business. And I think that, I think there's a lot of growth left here and all this before I think we all start looking at how can we, join forces within one umbrella. I think it's really about working together in the meantime and making sure we're filling all the gaps. And then, by natural selection, I think we're going to find out what people really want to see and, what they'll gravitate to. That'll in turn bring the advertisers in.
Well, the audience owns you
Flo-
in this world, yeah.
Yeah, and
You decide.
Flo, well, I'll take this one because I feel eyes staring at me. We've done some of the consolidating, right? Years ago, we acquired Michael Rigsby's company in Dirt on Dirt, and then we acquired Speed Shift. We just did a big deal with Mav TV and brought their streaming platform onto ours. And so I think you mentioned consolidation. We've done some of that certainly. Though I will say competition's really good for the market. And so I think that brings out the best in what we are able to deliver and bring back to the sport. So while I do think there's going to be consolidation, I agree with Dan. There's a lot more growth to be had, and new competitors will certainly enter the space. I don't have any doubt of that. And will continue to elevate. And so a consequence, I think that's a positive one. I think we're all going to have to continue to up our game rapidly.
Yeah, I'm glad I get to watch all of you do this for a while before we do what we do.
We've
Yeah,
got
and
sorry, go ahead.
go ahead, Cristina.
Yeah, what you have to say, Cristina?
Again, it speaks to the fact that we're a little different in this regard, but we have a $1 million plus bonus fund that's a consequence of our live streaming. So that's a pretty big consequence for the drivers, right?
Yeah, that's the right kind of consequence for the
Yeah.
drivers. That's spectacular, actually. And
the opportunities are still flushing themselves out. And I've said in this space, sometimes you have to talk about your ideas for 3 to 5 years before everybody understands them and they start to a track promoter or a sanction can put it all together and start to understand the opportunities. And we're starting to see that now in all of us. I know we've had a few, and I know Flo has done it as well. We can do made for TV stuff effectively now, or made for streaming audiences. So there's opportunities to have events in some circumstances now that changes the dynamic at the track. And it depends on who's out there and understands our audiences. We have promoters that sometimes will have events that are 6 hours long, and the reason that they're 6 hours long is that their emphasis is on having 5 classes of racing.
Yeah.
And if you can deliver an opportunity that says, why don't we just narrow that down to one important class for this one moment, and we'll do it on, the middle of the week, or even, in the off season, those opportunities are new. So, and promoters are starting to understand that through partnerships with the broadcast groups that we can do that. But it's still taking some time for that to all rattle around in folks' heads and understanding how those opportunities work. And it takes time.
Yeah, well, I am looking at the faces of the future here. So I'm very, very interested to see how all this turns out, and as Chris Konamaki told me the night we launched Racer, he was the one who raised the toast to our success and was a friend and mentor to me. He raised a toast and said, "There's room in this sport for all of us."
Definitely
True.
So I raise a toast to all of you and wish you all the best in what you're trying to do here. I think it's great for our sport.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks,
Thank
Paul.
you.
Thank you very much. Great session, great panel. We learned a lot of stuff, and this is the future. So this week is all about this, bringing people from everywhere in the world, from every corner of the industry to connect, exchange, interact, and learn. So thank you very much for being with us.
Registering on ePartrade is easy. To start, click on the Join for Free button on the homepage. First, search your company to see if it's already in our database. If you see your company on the list, click on it to select it. Then, choose Claim Company if you are one of the decision makers, an owner, marketing person, or main company contact. Or choose Join Company if you are an employee, and press Continue. If you couldn't find your company in our database, select Register a New Company. On the following page, fill out your name, email, phone number, job title, and choose a secure password. If you chose Register a New Company, you'll need to choose your business type. Select Supplier if you're looking to display products or services and connect with buyers. Choose Racing Business if you're looking to source new parts and connect with suppliers. Choose Race Team if you own or are a member of a professional race team. Then, enter your company name. Please provide a website, Facebook page, or LinkedIn if you have one, and choose to either claim or join the company. You can view and agree to our terms of use here. If you'd like to receive our weekly newsletter, choose Accept. Finally, click Register Now and your registration will be submitted for approval. An email will be sent to your inbox. Please confirm your email address and you will be approved shortly. Welcome to eParTrade.